Sometimes within the dead of night, the scariest place in the world is our very own house. Something which through the eyes of a child can become a landscape of fear as soon as the sun goes down and the lights go out. That entire mood is exactly what writer and director Kyle Edward Ball has achieved in his new movie Skinamarink. As per all Nightmare Fuel episodes, there will be major spoilers ahead. The title of this film is certainly a strange one that reflects the children's song Skinamarink with two N's on skin, or sometimes Skidamarink. It's a sweet and silly song that expresses the feeling of love towards loved ones at all times of day, but love can come in many forms, and in this film, it's nothing less than nightmare-fueled threat. Skinamarink is a film that is more of an experience piece than anything purely character-driven or narrative-led, even though as it unravels, we gain hints about why the sinister undertones are brought to light. In that sense, this has a really Lynchian mood to it, whereby the world it takes place in makes reality very unreal. The premise is a simple one. The entire film takes place in a house. There's two children, Kevin and Kaylee, who live with their dad. It's hinted through the dialogue that their mother passed away. During the night, strange occurrences begin, whereby things begin to disappear, like a door and the toilet, before the dad goes missing. And what ensues is a slow-burning, unnerving bedlam with Kevin and Kaylee being tormented by the apparitions of their parents. Ball utilizes an old-school style of visuals in the film, making it grainy and dusty, with the soundtrack crackling like a record player, and even the credits are done in the classic way of all the cast and crew credited at the start, and then when the film ends, it ends. It even states that the film is in colour, which was a really nice throwback touch. Because of this, the film hit with me on a nostalgic level, almost like I was an ideal target for Skinamarink, as I can relate a lot to it. It takes place in 1995, the year I was born, but other than that, I myself have memories from my childhood like this. My grandparents used to live in a really big house, which when I was the size of a child seemed even bigger, like a mansion. I had a recurring nightmare of being in that house, waking up in the night and wandering around in the dark, being scared of all the nooks and crannies and half-opened doors leading to even more darkness. I think this is something a lot of people can relate to. The comfort and familiarity of your home can get zapped away by the irrational fear of the dark that human beings have inbuilt. The vagueness, the shadows, the thought that something could be hidden within that darkness looking back at you yet you can't see. That sense of the unknown within the dark is executed so well in Skinamarink. And to link that back to the film's classic style of sound design and visual editing, the haziness of the film reminded me of the haziness of those haunted memories. The production of Skinamarink complemented exactly what it wanted to tap into conceptually. It's a deliberately slow movie where a good bulk of the runtime is a series of shots of the house. Corridors, corners of rooms, doors left ajar. You really feel the scale of this house. The more you see of it, the bigger it becomes in your mind. Not only do I relate this to the feeling I mentioned before about things feeling bigger when you're a child, but also I think that both the darkness and the level of fear experienced within it can make your perception alter into everything feeling even bigger still. It's so atmospheric and tense, and the way that the brightness of the film has been adjusted upwards to give it that slightly chalky effect to it mimics a person's eyes adjusting to the dark after spending enough time in it. Again, I think that only enhanced its themes further. Not only does the film's soundtrack have a lot of silent sections, other than the record player crackling of course, but a lot of the film's sound comes from the use of old cartoons. Sometimes we see them on an old TV, other times you just hear them with the white flashing of the TV partially illuminating the house. Again, I was able to relate to this. A lot of kids can't get to sleep without some form of light and or sound that is comforting to them. In my case growing up, I always used to sleep with a very similar TV playing, so I could fall asleep to the comforting sound. With the cartoons here, it felt natural that the kids watched a lot of cartoons as some form of comfort within the scenario of having no supervision or guardian type figure to protect them. Also in my life, there'd be times I'd wake up and go get a drink or use the bathroom bathroom, and the TV would still be playing. The light and sound of it would act as a little bit of a guide for me as I entered the darkness, giving me not only some comfort, but a link back to the safety of the bedroom, something I could latch onto and follow. So in Skinamarink, I felt like Kevin and Kaylee were utilising the cartoons as that kind of ball of string in the labyrinth to give them a pathway to a safe space while exploring the house. However, when the kids do go exploring, they probably wish they hadn't, as all they experience is a series of nightmarish threats from their parents, or at least what remains of them. The pivotal scene in the movie for me is a super long sequence where Kaylee goes looking for her dad. She enters his bedroom to look for him, but he isn't there. A voice whispers for Kaylee to look under the bed. The whispering voices here and throughout the film are so much more gut-punching and unsettling than shouting voices. And when Kevin and Kaylee whisper to each other, combined with the innocence and naivety of their dialogue, it makes you not only sense their fear, but also their confusion and their vulnerability. Kaylee looks under the bed, but there's nothing there. And when she pulls up, there's someone sitting on the side of the bed wearing striped pajamas. Kaylee looks under the bed again, and coming back up, not only is the pajama figure missing, but now her mother is sitting on the opposite side of the bed, her back facing Kaylee. The mother, we know, is likely not alive, given the dialogue. It's such a simple POV panning shot that doesn't move quickly. It moves at a pace where you feel the anticipation of something bad going to happen. The drawn-out sequence ends in one of the film's very few jump scares, all of which I think were handled extremely well. The sound used on the jumps is so sharp, with moments like a toy floating, lingering in the air for a long time. You know of its presence, you know whatever could happen in terms of a scare is going to come from that doll. Yet the film's soundtrack being mostly quiet makes the stabbing sting of the scare so much harder when it hits. But the parts that connected with me the most weren't the jump scares, they were the eerie moments. Over time, the dad's voice changes to being much lower and modulated, like the way the Deadites talk in The Evil Dead. Just the little bits where that voice style chuckles away at the kids during the night, tormenting them, really mess with me. Then there's a line where Kevin is told to put a knife in his eye, which when delivered was bone-chilling. There's a cartoon where a section gets stuck and ends up replaying. The sound effect from the cartoon is extremely similar to the iconic photograph sounds in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. However, the best use of nightmare fuel in this film for me was playing on the idea of your mind seeing vague outlines of things in the dark and your mind playing tricks on you into seeing something else. There are two key examples of this in the film. The first is when the toy phone scene earlier in the film is now seen with the lights off, so there's an outline of its eyes and mouth peeking through the darkness, barely visible, and it looks like some kind of demon staring back at the audience. However, turning on the torch reveals it's just the toy phone, before we get another loud jump scare, so it was a good double whammy. The second example is the film's final shot, which I'll get into after discussing the film's climax. It gets super ambiguous here. Kaylee goes missing and an injured Kevin tries to find her. Eventually his dad tells him that Kaylee wanted to be with her mom and dad, though didn't do what she was told, so her dad took her mouth away. In terms of the ambiguity, we get some text saying 572 days. What does that mean? That Kevin has been trapped in this nightmare house for 572 days? It baffled me before the film flips upside down. At the end of a corridor, we can see a huge pile of Lego on the ceiling, or is it meant to be the floor? And there's also a tipped over Wendy house at the end of it. I can only guess at the symbolism here. Is the house that Kevin is in actually the Wendy house, and that's the house we've spent the film in? Is the whole thing with the parents going missing like they're all toys and the parents' toys have been taken out the house? Was Kevin in the real house but has now been transported to the Wendy house? Or is there no relevance of that Wendy house at all? It's really hard to tell, but I feel like Ball is never going to reveal his intentions with this final act of the film and let people guess. But that final shot is something that will unmistakably never leave the back of my mind. The camera zooms into the darkness and a slightly pale outline of a smiling face becomes just about visible that you can make it out. It doesn't do anything other than speak a couple words, but just that image of this this thing peering back at you. This is something that I'll never forget. It's the best embodiment of the mind placing a face in the shadows I've ever seen on screen. I loved Skinamarink. Perhaps that's because, given the series of personal examples I've given, I was able to connect with it a lot more than perhaps others. Regardless, I think that it's a spectacular cinematic achievement, and one of the most genuinely disturbing horror film experiences I've had in a very long time. But what did you think of Skinamarink? Let me know in the comments below, and we shall see you next time for another dose of Nightmare Fuel.